Bruchim Abayim, welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Shelach, the Ben La'ashri, on Parshas Shelach, the Tzaddik of Ra'anana. I'd like to share with you today 7 gems of the Ben La'ashri on the Parsha. Let's begin with his drush on the opening Rashi. Rashi says, Shlach Lecha. Why the juxtaposition of the Parsha of the Meraglim with the episode of Miriam? Says Rashi, because Miriam was stricken for her speech, she spoke about her brother, and these Rishaim, says Rashi, did not learn from what happened to Miriam. So the Ben Lashri is bothered that when Rashi says that Miriam spoke about her brother, why does Rashi have to say that Miriam spoke about her brother? Doesn't everyone know Moshe Rabbeinu was her brother? Who doesn't know that Moshe was the brother, that Moshe was the brother of Miriam? What's Rashi adding? So the Ben Lashri says as follows. Many quote the Imrei Emes, who ask on the Rashi at the end of Parshas Yisrael. Rashi says that on the pasuk, Lo sigale ervascha alav, do not uncover the nakedness of the kohen when he's stepping up the Mizbeach, that the reason why we're not make steps going up to the Mizbeach and instead we make a ramp is because a steps would cause a widening of the gate of the kohen, and it would be an embarrassment to the stones of the steps of going up to the Mizbeach, and therefore we want to minimize the length of the step, and we have a ramp instead. And Rashi makes a kavachomer that if stones that don't have das are to be makbid on their bizayon, we have to be careful not to be mavaza them. So your friend who's created in the image of his creator, and he's makbid on his bizayon, alachas kama v'kama. Well, in that case, as the Imrei Emes, then what is Rashi saying? Miriam spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu, and she was punished, so the Meraglim should have learned their lesson and not spoken about Eretz Yisrael. What's the comparison? Eretz Yisrael is just stones, is inanimate. Just because a person is punished for speaking Lashon Hara about a human being, why would the Meraglim think they would be punished for speaking about a stone? Says the Ben La'ashri, that is exactly what Rashi's bothered by. And Rashi's answer is, Miriam spoke about her brother, Moshe. Moshe was Anav Ma'oid. He was even more of an Anav than Abraham, who said, Va'anoichi afar va'ifer, I am merely dust and ashes. Moshe Rabbeinu was even less makbid about his bizayon than dirt. And therefore, the Meraglim should have learned a lesson that if Miriam spoke about Moshe, who Bechlal was not makbid at all about his bizayon, and she was punished, alachas kama v'kama, they have to be careful not to speak even about the stones of Eretz Yisrael. Remez number 2, offering number 2, Shlach Lecha Anashim. The Rashi Tevis of Shlach Lecha Anashim are Eishel. This was to reflect and to hint to the Zechus of Avraham Avinu, the Midah of Chesed. Then we have the pasuk Vayishlach Oisam Moshe. Oisam are the letters MS, the Zechus of Yaakov Avinu, the Midah of MS. And Yitzchak Avinu, we suggest, if what the Ben La'ashri means, is Yitzchak is alluded to in the word Shelach. Shelach is Gematria 338, Eish Lamed Zayin. Yitzchak Avinu was thrown into the fire of the Akedah at the age of 37 years old. Okay, offering number 3, Kalev ben Yefuneh. Klal Yisrael said that the Chazal say that Kalev ben Yefuneh pulled a trick on the Meraglim. He was echad b'peh echad b'leiv. He made it believe as if he was going along with them, but he said, I'm following you, I'm going to go along with you, but ultimately he had in mind to get their attention, and he would speak out against them. He said, is this the only thing Moshe Rabbeinu did? And v'chizu b'lvad asa ben Amram, is this the only thing that Moshe Rabbeinu did? And they thought he was going to criticize Moshe, and he turned on them, and he said, he brought down the man, and he gave us the Torah. So Kalev ben Yefuneh was echad b'peh echad b'leiv. He was able to very politically and adeptly go along with them and then speak out against them. So the Ben Lashri wants to know, where did Kalev ben Yefuneh get this koyach from? Where did he get this ability to be so politically savvy, to make it as if he's going to go along with the Meraglim and then turn on them? Well, says the Ben La'ashri, the Arizal tells us Kalev was the neshama of Eliezer Eved Avraham. Eliezer Eved Avraham began his career as an Aror, but then Lavan said to him, Boy Beruch Hashem. Beruch, if you take the final chaf, the final chaf could have a gematria of 500. There's an idea that the final letters, Menatzbach, also have a designated gematria. So the final chaf is 500, the final mem is 600, the final nun 700, the final pei 800, the final tzadi 900, and 1,000 is aleph. Aleph is 1, and elef is 1,000. So if you take the word Baruch, with the final chaf being gematria 500, the gematria of the word Baruch would then be 708. The gematria of Tachash. The Tachash was a special animal that had many gavanim, many colors. It never had the same color. So too, Kalev, who had the neshama of Eliezer, had many flavors, many colors. He was able to show different sides to him and different desires and different perspectives, and they couldn't sort of peg him. What did he really hold? And he was able to use this koyach of Tachash of 708 to make it seem as if he was going along with the Meraglim, while in fact he ultimately turned on them. Okay, offering number 4. Lamate Yosef, Lamate Menashe. The Arizal writes in Likutei Torah that the reason why it says Yosef by Menashe is the 12 Shvatim, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, their souls were Nesaber in the Meraglim. And in the Meragel of Shevet Menashe, Yosef was Nesaber. How about Yehoshua ben Nun? Moshe Rabbeinu davened for him, and he added a Yud so that Yoshua should have the soul of none other than Levi. Says the Ben Lashri amazingly, the letters Daled, Tes, Lamed, Nun, Taf are interchangeable, and the Lamed could be exchanged with a Daled. So the name Levi, Lamed Vav Yud, the Lamed could be exchanged for a Daled. Then Levi becomes Yud. So when Moshe added a Yud to Yehoshua, what he was doing was he was adding the Shama of Levi, that Levi's Neshama should attach itself to Yehoshua. So the adding of the Yud is the indication that Yehoshua did not have the Neshama of Yosef, instead he had the Neshama of Levi. Yud is the same, Yud Vav Daled. The Daled could be interchanged with the Lamed. So when Moshe added the letter Yud, that was a gift, gifting him with the soul of Levi. However, what's interesting is that elsewhere the Arizal writes in Likutei Torah that the soul of a different Shevet was Nesaber in Yehoshua, and namely the soul of Ephraim. So the Ben Lashri says it could be, being from Shevet Yosef, he had the soul of Ephraim, and being a Talmud of Moshe from Shevet Levi, he was able to be Nesaber ben Nishmas Levi. Okay. Vayikra Moshe leHoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. It is well known, the words of the Targum Yosim and Uziel, that when Moshe saw the humility of Yehoshua, he called him with the extra Yud. He gave him the extra Yud in his name. Well, the Ben La'ashri says something very interesting. He says that at the beginning of the Parsha, they're called Rashi Alfei Yisrael. And here they're called Bnei Yisrael. Why? Because the souls of the Meraglim were Nesaber from the souls of the Shvatim. In other words, the souls of the Shvatim were Nesaber into the souls of the Meraglim. Yehoshua had the soul of Ephraim. Now, Ephraim did not come to be Nesaber in Yehoshua's soul. Only Yosef came to be Nesaber in the soul of Menashe's Meragel. And therefore, Yeshua's name was missing. Until now, he was called Yehoshua. Now he is called Hoshea. So Moshe davened, and he added the Yud, so that he should not be left without being Nesaber in some kind of Shevet, And therefore, by adding the Yud, so the soul of Levi was Nesaber and Yehoshua. Bottom line is, says the Ben Lashri, which two Shvatim were successful in their Meraglim, Yehuda and Levi. That's why when Yehoshua later sent out Meraglim, he only sent out Kalev from Shevet Yehuda and Pinchas from Shevet Levi, knowing that these were the only two Shvatim that were successful in their Meraglim. Okay, offering number 6. Alu Zeba Negev Alisa Mesahar. And Chazal in the Medrash Tanchuma, cited by Rashi, why did Moshe Dafka send them to the Negev and to the Har? And Rashi gives his pshat. Says the Ben Lashri, based on the Gemara Bava Basra Daf Chavav, that Rabbi Chanina said that his son died because he cut down a fig tree. From here we see that the punishment for cutting down a fruit tree is misa. Therefore, the Medrash tells us that when the Canaanim heard that the Klal Yisrael were coming to spy out the land and to take over, they immediately cut down their fruit trees so Klal Yisrael shouldn't think that it's a good land, and because of that, they died. And that's why when Klal Yisrael came to be Meragel on Eretz Yisrael, the Canaanim were busy with the Levayas burying their children. Now, there are only 2 areas that didn't cut down their fruit trees. The giants who lived in the mountain, who trusted in their strength, so they weren't afraid of Klal Yisrael, they didn't cut down their fruit trees. And Amalek, who lived in the Negev, who Amalek already had experience, they were able to weaken us in the past. They didn't cut down their fruit trees, so that's why we dafka went to spy that area out, because that area still had its lush trees. Now we understand why wherever Klal Yisrael went in Eretz Yisrael, people were burying their dead. It was because they had cut down their fruit trees. Says the Ben La'ashri, this is the fruition and reflection of what Reb Simcha Bunim of Parshas says, Rabbois machshavos b'lev ish v'atzas Hashem hisakom, that Hashem utilizes the plans of the nations of the world to try to harm us. He uses that against them to bring us salvation. The nations of the world thought, okay, we have to hide our fruit trees so that Klal Yisrael shouldn't think it's a good land. But that's exactly why they didn't notice that Klal Yisrael was coming to spy, because they were so busy with their burials, they didn't notice the Meraglim, so their plan backfired on them. Okay, we move on to the final offering, Parak Yadale Pasuk Aleph, Vatisa Kol Ha'eda, Vayitnu Es Koilam, Vayivku Ha'am Balayla Hahu. And the Ben Lashri asked, the words Vatisa Kol Ha'eda, Vayitnu Es Koilam, Vayitnu Es Koilam. The word Vayitnu is extra. It should say Vatisa Kol Ha'eda Es Koilam. The whole Eda lifted up their voice. Why Vayitnu Es Koilam? Well, the Ben Lashri also asks, first it says Vatisa Kol Ha'eda, and then it says Vayivku Ha'am, and Chazal Darshan, Ha'eda refers to the Sanhedrin. So the Ben Lashri offers a very amazing drush on these psukim and on many areas of Torah. We know Chazal say Hakol Kol Yaakov V'Hayadayim Midei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov and the hands are the hands of Esav. And Chazal Darshan that when the voice of Yaakov is chirping in the Beis HaMedrash, the hands of Esav have no dominion. So it comes out when Klal Yisrael learns Torah, they dominate Esav. So you say, why? But didn't Yitzchak give Esav a bracha of the sword? Yeah, but for a sword you need 2 hands, because number one, how are you going to hold on to a sword if you don't have hands? If a person doesn't have hands, he can't hold a sword. And the sword itself needs a hand, because if the sword doesn't have a handle, somebody's going to cut themselves holding the sword. So in order to be able for Esav to have the koyach of the cherev, he needs 2 yadayim. He needs 1 yad to hold the sword and another yad of the sword itself. And when the koil of Yaakov is mitzavtzef the Beis HaMedrash, the 2 hands of Esav are powerless and he can't use his sword. This is the koyach of the Torah. Yad plus yad is koyach. When Klal Yisrael learns Torah, Hashem oiz la'am yitin, God gives us the koyach. Esav doesn't have the koyach, his sword doesn't have a hand, and he doesn't have a hand to hold the sword. This is the meaning of what Chazal say. When Amalek came, they fought Klal Yisrael berfidim, that our hands weakened from Torah. What do hands have anything to do with it? The answer is, when we weaken in Torah, we lose our hands. We give the hands to Esav. Esav has one hand to hold the sword and one handle for the sword itself. This is what it means. Vatisa kal ha'eda. The Eda refers to the Sanhedrin. When the Sanhedrin elevated themselves and moved away from the rest of the people who they're supposed to teach Torah to, Vayidnu as koilam, our koil ha-Torah is taken away and chas v'shalom given to the Mekatrugim. But when the voice of Torah is heard strongly, then we get koyach Hashem oiz la'amo yitain. We take away Esav's hand to hold the sword, we take away Esav's handle of the sword, and Mamela, we are protected. When the koil of Yaakov is strong, the hands of Esav are powerless. He has no yad to hold the sword, and he has no hand of the sword itself. Wishing everyone an amazing Shabbos. Shabbos Mavarchim, Chodesh Tammuz, Bracha v'Hatzlacha, and only Besurais Tairais.